we've got a gathering of all sorts of different artists, photographers, poets, musicians, singers, and they've come together to work on a project called Discovering Doggerland, looking at coastal change and how the cliffs are eroding. And we're actually looking across the North Sea over here, where at one time we were connected to Europe with a land that was the hunting grounds of Mesolithic people. And so we brought these artists together as part of Waveney and Blythe Art's approach to linking landscape and art to explore their responses to lost landscapes, lost homes, lost peoples, and to work collaboratively to come up with an artistic response to the whole concept of lost landscapes.
Initial feelings was a kind of creative terror. I felt that photography as a medium was going to be difficult. I felt that if you're perhaps a writer, a storyteller, a poet, a musician, a painter, there are so many art forms where it's inherent in that art form that you imagine something, that you create something internal as a response to an external idea or concept. And photography is kind of rooted in being able to photograph what's in front of the camera.
I found that a lot of what people were saying overlapped with different things that I felt about the geology, for instance, the erosion of the coastline, the migration of people, the way you could read cultures into geologies.
I wanted to find a way of looking out to sea and being able to conjure up something, and all I could see really under the water at that stage was salt marsh, maybe stretching to France. This first effort was to do the reed beds, because I thought, and the grasses, I thought if one was to push one's way through reeds, you might sort of start walking to Doggerland. It was trying to find a journey really that I could make myself on that seabed that would lead me somewhere.
But my real kind of eureka moment was when we were sitting in this pub in Suffolk before we went to the beach, and I was shown the map of where Doggerland had attached to the kind of mainland Britain. And I realised that I grew up on the edge of Doggerland because I grew up on the edge of, well, on the Wash. So that was really exciting because it became real.
Well, I picked up different bits of information from Tim Holt Wilson. Had quite a long chat with him and went over to his place. He showed me loads of bones and things that weren't necessarily from that area, but they were very ancient. So I suppose the bones were, and the shells and the flints and everything that I found, I wanted to incorporate in the sculpture.
I began thinking about the culture of people who might have been living in Doggerland. So I wanted to try and think in terms of what language might have represented, what sounds might have represented, both the human sounds, but more particularly the hearing of sound by people who were living on Doggerland. And it just struck me that I'm sure that there was a poetry at Doggerland that we don't have access to, so I wanted to try and think back into that as far as it might be possible to do.
As I explored further ideas, I ended up going right back to Pinhole, because Pinhole, I felt, really uses kind of rudimentary tools of photography. Pinhole photography just relies on light entering a dark chamber and hitting a light receiving surface that records the light falling on it. And that's where I ended up shooting imaginary Doggerland landscapes, almost from a worm's eye view in the ground. But I felt that Pinhole, with its various risks and its imprecise nature, was almost a bit like grabbing a fragment back through time and pulling it forward. And we were kind of getting a trace of something that had happened as a series of imagined landscapes.
It had to be something more imaginative and to get the feeling of this element of time. I wanted to trigger some, in people's minds, trigger some sense that it was a process of inundation, something that creeps up slowly and, you know, it changes your life, so that I can do that with paint, make these gradual changes that trigger thoughts.
So I couldn't really think of doing a sculpture that was, I mean, it's living now, but it's about what was. So I decided also to pick the grasses and things that are there. And would they have been in Doggerland? I don't know. Who knows? We don't know exactly, but that's why I put in the birch and pine cones, because that was some information I got about the types of trees that would have been there. Also, you see, with the animals, most of them are extinct now. So, although I wanted to put bones of animals in, I know that they are bones that are animals that are much later. But I wanted to get a pig skull in there, just because as pigs, it seems to be quite important to have them. I don't see how you can create something that's totally gone without putting some of what is now into it, which is the tricky thing, because whether you're a photographer or a painter, you're not painting the past as such, are you? But you can create the mood and the inspiration that you've got to then produce a piece of work that would probably give you a feeling of the past.